So we had a look at error messages that we shouldn't panic when we read them. We had a look at other approaches we can take to find and fix errors, and we had a look at the browser developer tools. Now, let's have a look at a dedicated tool which is available for React development, which can help us with React specific problems and which can help us with understanding our React application better. And that would be the React DevTools. You can simply search for React DevTools and you should find an entry here on chrome.google.com. They are also available for Firefox, but I would strongly recommend that you use Google Chrome if you want to work with them, because they're a browser extension which you can add to the browser. Now, I already did add them, but you can add them here with a simple add button in case you didn't add them to your browser yet. So you simply visit that page here in the Chrome extensions store. Though these tools, this extension is totally free, you don't need to pay, no worries, and you simply add it to your browser. You might be prompted to restart your browser thereafter, but once you added them, here in your browser DevTools, you'll have two new tabs, Components and Profiler. Now we'll have a look at the Profiler later in the course. For now, let's focus on Components. If we click on it, we see a little component tree here on the right. And that is what we're building with React, right? We're building a tree of components. So it makes sense that we see that here. And what's interesting here is that here we only see React components. Now in the browser, we got the Elements tab, and there we see the entire DOM as it was rendered by the browser. And in the end, that's just the DOM that is implied by our components. So that can also be useful for debugging our DOM and our UI. But the difference to the Components tab here is that in the Components tab, we see the actual React components and the components structure that is responsible for this UI output. And we see, for example, that we have that root app component, and it's even getting highlighted on the left, with the course input component, which has the button component, with the course goal list component with the different course goal items. We can also click on those components to get more information about them. Here, for example, we already see that a key is set, but then if we scroll down for the course goal item, we actually see a list of all props that it's getting. That includes the children prop, so the content passed between the opening and closing tag, the ID prop, the on-delete prop, and this new prop, which we can ignore. For the on-delete prop, we, for example, see that the delete item handler function is passed as a value. For children, we see that it's the text of the task. And if we scroll down further, we see which components were responsible for rendering this. And these components are ordered depending on how close they are. The topmost component here is the component which directly rendered course goal item. And the further down we go here, the further away that component is in the main component tree. Indeed, course goal list component did render the two course goal items, but of course course goal list then was rendered by app, which is why we see that here as well. We also see the source code where we can find information about the course goal item. And if we click on course goal list here, for example, we're taken to that component. Of course, we could have also clicked on it here. You can also search for a component here, like for item, to highlight them and find them quicker. And you can also configure what you see here. The general theme, light mode, dark mode, how it should be displayed, and in general, you can play around with the settings here to, for example, display more information, less information, or simply in a different style. I prefer that style, and therefore I'll keep it this way. Now, what you'll also see is that if you, for example, go to the course input, you don't just see the props there, but you also see the hooks that are being used here. And you see that in there, we're using two state hooks. Remember that I mentioned that use state, which we use to manage state, is a so-called React hook. And later we'll learn about other hooks as well. So this is a so-called React hook, and that's why it's showing up under this hooks section here. It's a state hook, which is responsible for managing the state of course input. And here we can see and actually also change the current state. For example, here, if I enter master React, you see that's reflected down there. And if I add an exclamation mark here, it's not reflected in the input because in our code, we're actually not feeding the current value back into the input. We could do that by setting the value prop, but we're not doing that here. But nonetheless, if I now add the goal, you see that the exclamation mark is part of the text that was added here. Here it is. Or here it was, since I clicked on it. So we can change the state here, and it really will have an effect on the UI. On the app component, we, for example, see our array of goals. And if I change one of the goals here, if I change the text here by adding multiple exclamation marks, that is reflected here on the left as well. So that's another great tool for playing around with your interface, with your state, with your props, and for understanding how everything is connected, and also for trying out different use cases and different scenarios. So that's the last tool I want to show you in this module, because the React Dev tools can also be really useful when it comes to debugging and analyzing your React application.